to review, because it's a pretty simple operation. It meets all of the requirements of the zoning ordinance. The city staff is satisfied. We're asking for a decision. Mr. Johnson is here. He can answer any specific questions you would have about the site plan process. I'd be remiss if I didn't say we are interested in cooperating with the city. We believe the August 7 meeting was a good meeting. It was a productive meeting. It was thorough. I wasn't there either, but I've heard the same reports I'm sure you have. We think it was a good meeting. We want that dialogue to continue. But we want that dialogue to be mutual. We want it to be bilateral and not unilateral. We want to cooperate as much as we can. But we obviously want cooperation from the city. And cooperation from the city, in our minds, cannot include taking away from us the by right uses that we have under the zoning ordinance that every other property owner in the city has, just because we need to have a complete 119-acre plan before we can do anything on the property. That's not a fair standard. It's not in your zoning ordinance, and certainly we will object to any type of decision like that.
Could I ask you a question? You mentioned the site planning and or master planning, if you will, and the potential for a PUD. How long do you think it might be or might take before you repeat to that point?
You just went above my pay grade. I'm not going to tell you. I would suspect that it will be a couple of years. I wouldn't say that that would be unreasonable before we know what the uses are going to be. And I'm just talking off the top of my head. I mean, we're talking about a large amount of land. We're talking about a cleanup operation that isn't done. We're talking about very sensitive discussions with the DEQ, with the prior owner. There are a ton of issues. And now we're talking about potential zoning issues and an initiatory petition and maybe more of the people. So there's so many things that could slow this thing down for so long. But it's not a round the corner kind of answer.
I think it's important to hear that though, because you mentioned master planning. I think it's important that we're thinking that might come tomorrow.
I appreciate that. And and it reminds me of one thing. There was discussion about compatibility, and I at least want to address that. Absolutely, compatibility is an issue, but what we're looking at right now is a site plan for a limited piece of the land. No one could argue it's not compatible with what's there.
Right.
Anything else that happens on that property obviously is going to be in front of you. You will have a chance to review the compatibility at that point. Yes, it will be with the scrap iron operation being there, but again, that's being there as allowed by right. So in our minds, the compatibility it's certainly compatible with what is there now, which is really all your zoning ordinance can ask and all we can really tell you right now.
I asked a question at the last meeting regarding where the scrap steel staging and dismantling areas are located, as to whether that was area that was already polluted or was not, and I didn't get an answer to that.
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Johnson answer questions about the site plan. I barely find my way home. They don't let me talk about those things. I'm limited to legal issues.
I'm going to have that problem if you live in the state.
Good evening. I don't recall the question last time, however, my knowledge of the site is
Could you please give your name and
I'm
address
sorry.
just for the minutes?
My name is Philip Johnson. I'm with Resource Planning and Design. I'm the planner for Melching Inc. on this project. My address is 105 West Exchange, Spring Lake. Regarding your question, I'm sorry I didn't recall that last time, but it's my understanding, and not to bag out of the question because I don't deal with the contamination, but this end of the site is not the portion that's the focus of our discussions with the DEQ
dismantling and scrap staging areas are on both sides of the boat basin, and they're also adjacent to the stormwater pond. What measures will be taken to prevent contamination from entering the lake, either through the stormwater pond or through the boat slip?
All the surface water, and I do have a full scale that I could set up and draw for you, the area, but as far as stormwater, everything's contained on site. We have the existing stormwater pond, which is east of the boat basin, that was used previously by Savvy with the discharge into the municipal system. What we've done is we've added another settling basin, if you will, a sediment basin to intercept any runoff before it goes into the stormwater pond, which ultimately by a flow is discharged into the city municipal system. There's no anticipation of contaminant runoff from the proposed use into that.
Commissioners, any other questions? Thank you. Open this up to the public. Anybody that would like to comment on this?
This is not a public.
Feel that there are enough people here that are interested, and I'm going to allow them to speak. So if anyone has anything that they would like to say regarding this proposal, please raise your hand. Go. Secretary.
My name is Peter Sartorius, 1575 Edgewater Street. Just a few thoughts to throw out for your consideration. First of all, I've been a professional planner in this community for almost 40 years. 6 years I served on this commission, 3 years as its chair. And I was also co-chair of the Imagine Muskegon planning effort a few years ago. I think one of the things we have to realize is that this is not an ordinary situation. In fact, it's a very extraordinary situation. And I believe the commission, both the planning commission and the city commission, have a responsibility to consider the impacts on surrounding land uses. I think the will of the people pursuant to a vote of the people is certainly relevant. It may not be binding, but it's certainly relevant. I think that a site plan, the fact that there is a site plan review implies that there are site considerations and standards to be considered for any development, especially since the current zoning is clearly incompatible with the current land uses that surround it, namely waterfront marine and residential. Anybody who's lived in that neighborhood for a number of years knows the impact of the former paper mill in terms of noise, traffic, particulates, air quality, and so forth. So given the location, and the contemporary circumstances, the impact on surrounding uses is relevant and pertinent. I think it would be myopic to think that that this site should be looked at as a closed site, and that its master plan for the site development has no relation to the master plan of this city, for which we've spent a lot of time and money developing a vision for the south shore of Muskegon Lake and the west end of the city. We've spent millions of dollars in restoration projects on the south end, on the south shore and the west end of Muskegon Lake, with the concept of converting its former industrial uses to recreation and tourist uses and other commercial uses, containing the industrial uses to the east end of the lake. This is our master plan, it belongs to the people, and I think that the commission, the city commission, as well as this commission, has a responsibility to consider those kinds of design and development criteria and standards and apply them to the site plan review. So I think, and finally, I just think that this represents once in a 100-year opportunity for this city to realize the vision that started around 1970 for converting the industrial uses of Muskegon Lake to more compatible uses for the quality of life of our current citizens and our future citizens. So I guess I would have to agree with Commissioner Spataro that to look at this site plan just as one development within a larger plan that isn't developed, it would be a mistake. I would also ask the city attorney to look at the implications of a citizen petition to rezone this property. If that petition is successful, true, it's not binding on the city. Such a vote has no power to actually rezone. However, it will force the city commission to undertake the due process involved and stipulated by the city ordinance in a rezoning hearing. So there will be a hearing if the ordinance passes. If the petition passes, there will be a process to rezone. If that process is successful in rezoning, then I think, and I would ask the city attorney to check it out, I think that any future starts on any uses that were incompatible with the new zoning would be prohibited. Yes, any development that has already been started would be grandfathered, but there would be no future uses permitted under I-2 if a rezoning was successful. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Nye. I live at 1495 Westwood Circle in Norton Shores. I'd just like to remind you that our water comes from Lake Michigan, just a few miles away from the channel. In view of that fact, I would like to know whether the site plan includes anything about whether any of this property is within a flood zone, either a 100-year flood zone or some other period of time. I would like you to consider what would happen if the Muskegon River were to have what's called a super flood, the kind that occurs every once in a while in natural history, and this scrapyard gets washed into Lake Michigan. And what effect would it have upon our drinking water? I would like to ask you whether this site plan gives any indication as to what the elevation is of the land above the lake level, and again, whether it takes into consideration in any way the history of flooding of the Muskegon River. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak for this issue? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Shanta Davey, 4380 Happy Point Lane, Norton Shores. Well, very emotional because I just feel, as Mr. Larson quoted, that this is something that is a higher calling and moral issue. There have been mistakes made. It was not rezoned when it was supposed to be rezoned. It's an extraordinary situation dealing with the health and safety of future generations of our children and grandchildren. Dioxins are one of the main things in a paper mill. These could be soaked into that landfill crap that's underneath there that's been filled in for years and be seeping into the lake forever. We don't have a full approval from DEQ and EPA. I've asked and asked for a public hearing on